The story begins with our MC playing a game in which he dashes towards the dragon and attacks it using his sword, finally defeating it after 3 months of continuous efforts. But as soon as he defeats it, he throws away his VR headset as his chest begins to hurt due to zero female interaction syndrome. But up until then, he had lived a good life and was told in the past that he only had 3 years to live. Therefore, he ended up quitting his job at the OnlyFans agency and poured all his time playing video games. Because of that, he ended up becoming one of the strongest players on the server, and after making full use of his knowledge, he managed to beat a boss that was considered unbeatable. At the same time, he wishes he could have lived longer, and after seeing his e-kittens asking if he's okay, the MC thanks them for everything, followed by him closing his eyes forever, wishing to find happiness in his next life. Before long, he wakes up on a bed and suddenly, all the memories of his past years come flooding into his mind. He realizes that these are the memories from when he was born up until now, and remembering himself wishing to find happiness in his next life. He figures that he has been reincarnated in another world with the memories of his past life. To start things off, he takes note of his emo boy look and realizes that he goes by the name Eldo now. Furthermore, he's the 4th son of a lower noble and his family doesn't think of him as anything but a waste of space. The only one who talks to him is his eldest sibling Rado, while the rest of his family completely ignores him. The reason behind this is because they had 3 years of poor harvest after he was born. However, they still haven't kicked him out considering he's too young, but he'll officially become an adult after his birthday tomorrow. And when that happens, he'll be banished from the city, but for some odd reason, Eldo isn't feeling hopeless at all, as this world is just like the game he became a master at. Apart from the coming-of-age ceremony, there are other things in this world such as magic skills and jobs. By job he means things like magician or swordsman, and just like the game, there's a particular skill everyone learns in the beginning. He confirmed this fact after his older brother bragged about his skills. Right now, Eldo's job is novice, and as the name suggests, it's a job for people who don't actually have a proper job and is the weakest of them all. To start things off, he uses a skill named self-care that ends up healing himself, and even though it's the lowest level recovery magic, Eldo is able to find out that the system in this world is the same as that game. However, there's one crucial difference between this world and the game, that is the general population has an overwhelming lack of knowledge. For example, the self-care he just used can be used by anyone, but he hasn't seen anyone use it yet. This skill can heal small wounds in an instant, but he still sees people rubbing herbs on wounds to heal them. But for Eldo, this is a blessing in disguise, and he should just get kicked out and become much stronger as he got the knowledge to easily survive. Just then, Rado appears in his room, making sure that his brother isn't stroking it, and asks Eldo if he's reading for his coming-of-age ceremony. Eldo agrees, informing Rado that he has decided not to undergo the coming-of-age ceremony. But when Rado argues that their dad is loaded enough to easily afford the ceremony, Eldo replies, saying that it's not about the cost, and he just doesn't want to go through it. Apparently, there are 2 ways to get a job. The first one is to receive it through a priest on the coming-of-age ceremony, while the second one is pretty simple but comes with a fatal flaw. In that method, you can't choose the job, and most of the jobs you get are all low-performance ones. Additionally, no matter what kind of job you receive, you can never change it. Therefore, in the game, the other method was considered the basics of the basics, and that was to get your job at the Royal Capital Church. That large church has a superior performance compared to the other churches, and one can get high-level jobs unlike the others. This is why Eldo needs to leave the village without undergoing the ceremony. Rado wonders what their old man would say after hearing this and asks Eldo if he wants to spend his whole life as novice. However, Eldo replies that he has a few things in mind and asks Rado to inform Dad for him. In the end, Rado agrees to talk to their father about it. The next day, their father comes to wake Eldo up, making him realize that the last time he spoke to his dad was almost 3 months ago. With that being said, he gives some money to Eldo, saying that he made a good choice by not doing the ceremony, later telling him to get out of his house. Without wasting any time, Eldo heads out of the house, noticing that all they left him is a shabby-looking sword and 10,000 gil, reminding him that the value of 1 gil is the same as 1 yen on Earth. Just then, he notices Rado waiting for him at the main village gate, asking if he's leaving already. Eldo agrees, saying that he plans to head to the neighboring town and become an adventurer, adding the fact that even a novice can become an adventurer if he has decent swordsmanship. Rado figures that he should get a job if he wants to become an adventurer, and hands him over around 100,000 gil. This makes Eldo realize that he's got a really good brother and decides not to take the money as 10,000 gil is enough. Even though Rado agrees, he decides to keep it safe in case Eldo comes back. With that being said, Eldo leaves the village and makes his way through a forest, deciding to head to a city with a guild. Apparently, guilds are a national organization and know the best way to get to the capital. But before that, Eldo is aware that all he has is a dollar store sword and hopes not to run into any demons. Before long, he runs into a demonic wolf who ends up noticing Eldo's presence as well. This reminds him that a novice enemy detection is quite low, and whenever a novice detects an enemy, so does the demon. Eldo wonders if the wolf will let him run away, and eventually decides not to let his guard down as this is his first battle in this world. Luckily, he still recalls the sensation of swinging a sword in the game, and the most important thing is the player's skill. As soon as the wolf sprints towards Eldo, he focuses on everything he learned from the game, and after successfully dodging the wolf's attack, he manages to cut the wolf in half, simultaneously receiving the critical hit multiplier from the system. Now he has gained the much-needed confidence, and knowing that all the things in the game can be applied in this world, he believes that he can survive with his knowledge from the game. Following that, Eldo is amazed at his body for moving so naturally and figures that if he can perform at his 70%, he could be considered an experienced player. He then remembers that the system is the same as the game and starts dismantling the wolf. Useful materials can be extracted from the monsters in order to make weapons and shields, but as this process was often called annoying or disgusting, the game added an auto-dismantling skill to make the whole process automatic. However, after he tries using that skill, nothing happens, making him realize that the monster would have disintegrated instantly if it were the game. After that, he tries using another skill called cleaning, which instantly cleans the wolf's blood on Eldo's hand. Later that day, he arrives at the town named Ilya, and while he's busy gawking at the hot chicks around, someone calls out to him, asking Eldo if he's lost. He agrees, asking that man if he knows where the guild is. That man notices the equipment Eldo is carrying and asks if he wants to become an adventurer, to which Eldo agrees. He then lets Eldo know that the equipment he's carrying is pretty poor and that he'd be kicked out of the guild if he barges in with that gear. Furthermore, that man decides to give Eldo a tip and advises him not to speak so formally, as adventurers don't use formal language. For example, if a bandit eavesdrops on a conversation, we would be able to tell who the leader is due to formality, which is why adventurers speak in a way which makes it harder to know the hierarchy in the group. Additionally, if adventurers heard Eldo speaking like this, they would figure that Eldo is dumb enough to even become a TikTok finance guru, let alone an adventurer. After Eldo fixes his tone, he gets guided by the man about where the guild is, and before leaving, he wishes Eldo good luck. Following that, Eldo remembers that even in his old village, no adventurer used formal language, no matter who they were addressing. Eventually, he arrives at the guild, and after walking inside, he notices a world map on the wall and realizes that the capital is on the neighboring continent at the other side of the sea. While traveling to another continent is quite the annoyance, Eldo is lucky as the continent is not that far away and his current goal will be to travel there. With that being said, he decides to check the job requests and remembers that one can find out about the monsters in the area by checking out the requests, and notices one about slaying the wolf that is surprisingly given a C rank. Apparently, requests are ranked from a rank to F rank, and Eldo figures that any monster can be defeated by a single hit from a novice if the critical hit is included, and the A rank monsters shouldn't be that difficult. Then, he looks at the other F rank requests and sees some small monsters that he had never seen before in the game he played. For now, he decides to bring the wolf's fangs to the counter, where he gets greeted by a flatty receptionist who asks if he's here to sell raw materials. Eldo replies that he wants to sell a monster's fang, but isn't sure what kind of monster it is. The receptionist named Teresa tells him that fighting without knowing your enemy is dangerous. Eldo further questions if he can sell materials even though he isn't registered in the guild, to which Teresa agrees, saying that the marketability depends on the monster's part. Ultimately, Eldo decides to make the process faster by just showing her the wolf's fangs. She gets surprised, but at the same time, starts doubting Eldo that he got the fangs from somewhere else. Eldo figures that Teresa is misinterpreting it as him trying to get easy achievements and reassures her that he just defeated it normally. Additionally, he wonders if the one he fought was weaker, but gets told that the strength of monsters isn't that different. Nonetheless, he asks Teresa about the amount of money he can sell it for, to which she replies that it would go for 32,000 gil, but won't be counted as an achievement. She decides to give him 2,000 gil extra, and Eldo agrees to sell it at that price, letting her know that he also wants to register at the guild. Teresa informs him that the exam fee is 5,000 gil and hands him over the money after deducting the exam test fee. Furthermore, she asks if he has a job, and when Eldo lets her know that he's a novice, a pretty clear expression of disappointment appears on her face. Nevertheless, Teresa tells him that he won't get the money back even if he fails, and when Eldo asks if they aren't going to reject his application, she replies that they don't do that and allows the applicant to make their own decision after taking the test. After that, she hands him a paper with exam choices written on it, asking him to choose the exam of his liking. Apparently, mostly all the exams require the usage of job-exclusive skills which Eldo can't use due to being a novice. Luckily, he finds one where he needs to win a battle against a swordsman, but at the same time, he is aware that it would be difficult, as his level is still 1. Defeating a well-trained swordsman must be hard, but even if he loses, it'll only cost him 5,000 gil. With that being said, he informs her about his exam choice, and after telling him that the exam will be held in the training area, she tells him to wait and goes in the training area. Before long, Teresa tells him to enter, and there, he finds an adventurer rocking the Vegeta haircut. He questions Eldo if he's the dumb novice who wants to become an adventurer, to which Eldo agrees, requesting him to take it easy. But that guy refuses to do so, saying that he'd bite the dust due to being a novice and his job is to prevent that. Eldo understands, asking him not to cause any serious injuries, and that adventurer reassures him, saying that he's a professional. Following that, he picks up a wooden sword, telling Eldo that he'll leave him with minor injuries. But Eldo asks if he should pick the same sword. He advises Eldo to use the weapon he's accustomed to, as it doesn't matter, even if it's a real sword, considering Eldo won't be able to hit a single attack. However, Eldo decides to use the wooden sword as well because it's lighter and ends up picking one that feels the best. With that being said, the duel begins, and Teresa decides to become the referee. As soon as the battle begins, Eldo begins to think that the only opportunity he'll get to win is when the examiner uses a skill. While a swordsman's skill is more powerful than a regular attack, they can't change their movements halfway through. But at the same time, if the examiner doesn't use any skills, he'll be beaten into a pulp. Instantly, the examiner begins dashing towards Eldo, and he figures that trying to defend would mean defeat. However, if the examiner is swinging downward, it can be avoided just by moving a bit. Just then, Eldo hears the examiner say guard crash, which is a skill that takes down enemies guarding themselves. This gives Eldo the perfect opportunity to dodge the attack and figures that he created an opening on purpose. Furthermore, Eldo is aware that if he can't get a critical hit here, then he can't complain if he fails the test. As expected, he manages to land a critical hit on the examiner, shocking Teresa and sending him crashing onto the ground. While Teresa ends the duel, Eldo is thankful to the examiner for going easy on him, completely unaware that the examiner is actually terrified of Eldo now. However, Eldo still thinks of it as the examiner doing an act and thanks him, figuring that he must be a really good person. After that, Eldo questions if he passed, to which the examiner agrees, asking where he learned swordsmanship from, to which Eldo replies that he's self-taught. Apparently, since it was a game, he could swing his sword as much as he wanted without getting tired, and stayed up late swinging the sword instead of his schlong like most of you guys. At this point, the examiner can't believe that he was defeated by a self-taught novice, but Eldo argues that he would have lost if the examiner didn't go easy on him. This comes as a surprise to the examiner and gets reminded by Eldo that he used the guard crusher to lose on purpose. As expected, the examiner has no idea what Eldo is talking about, while he believes that the examiner is still playing dumb. Following that, he gets congratulated by Teresa for passing the guild's admission exam, and she lets him know that starting today, he's a member of the Adventurers Guild. Teresa then gives him his personal guild card that serves as a proof, and after taking a look, he notices that his name is engraved on it along with his rank, that is F for now. Additionally, she asks if he would like to hear the guild's guidelines, and when Eldo agrees, Teresa decides to start off with the adventurer's obligation. Apparently, he is not allowed to submit false reports or divulge confidential information from his client. Lastly, he must obey the laws of the country he is working for. Curious, Eldo wonders what would happen if he were to break any of those, and Teresa lets him know that the punishment can range from getting suspended or even banned from registering again. In case of a criminal act, he can even be sentenced to death. Eldo further asks if these three are the only obligations he needs to follow and questions if it is required for him to provide assistance during an emergency. Luckily, the guild doesn't force adventurers to take requests even during emergencies, and these 3 are the only obligations they need to follow. With that out of the way, Teresa begins explaining the request's deadlines and penalties. Turns out the request will be termed incomplete if he fails to do it within the deadline, and if he were to fail a quest, he'd be forced to pay an amount as a penalty. This makes Eldo wonder what will happen if he completes a request, but doesn't report it before the deadline and gets told that the deadline is for reporting, and if he doesn't report in time, it'll be considered incomplete. After she is done yapping about every rule in existence, Teresa hands him a copy of guild lines and gets asked by Eldo if she has any fighting manuals. Even though there are some guides he can borrow, Eldo isn't allowed to take them outside without purchasing them. After reminding herself of the commonly used books, she puts 2 books in front of him that might be of help. Eldo decides to start off by reading the Bechery and realizes that the F rank column is full of monsters he has never heard of, and the same goes for the E and D rank. Additionally, he notices the wolves and some other small fries termed as C rank, making him wonder if this is some sort of joke. Rage Wolf is classified as B rank, reminding Eldo that the player in the game stops being a beginner after defeating one of them. Lastly, he decides to check the A rank section and notices that they are all blank. This comes as a relief to Eldo as there won't be any tough monsters to slurp his guts like noodles nearby. After that, he decides to take a look at the combat manual and reads through the basic level, beginner level, and the intermediate level. But even after reaching the advanced level, Eldo realizes that this is full of basic stuff. However, after skipping some of those pages, he notices that this is it, and there's no guide about one-on-one battles. Eventually, he comes across a page talking about Miracle Strike, but to his disappointment, finds out that this world's strongest person's critical hit was only 20%, which means that he only graduated from being a beginner. The thought of that person not knowing how to pull off critical hits enters Eldo's mind and remembers that the trick is to relax your hand before hitting the enemy to pull off a critical hit each time. Now the 20% makes sense to Eldo, as that person must have not known something this basic. When Teresa asks if the book was helpful, Eldo hesitantly agrees and asks her if she knows how to get to the capital. Teresa informs him that he needs to head to the coastal city of Minneton and take a ferry, but even the cheapest one costs around 3 million gills. But when Eldo asks if there is some other way, she replies that he can work for a big trading firm or become part of a noble family with connections to the capital, or he could just swim across the sea, but Eldo prefers to save 3 million gills instead. For the time being, he decides to stay in town and earn some money by fighting the monsters. With that being said, he asks Teresa for a request, and she hands him over an E-rank request of hunting lesser wolves. This makes Eldo question if he can take this request, while being an F ranker, to which she agrees as the request doesn't specify the rank. Realizing that it pays 4,000 gills per elimination, he wonders why the reward is so high and gets told that the request is quite hard. As expected, the coward asks for another request as he's not in a hurry to take the request above his level. This makes Teresa remind him that he beat the examiner, to which Eldo replies that it was because the examiner went easy on him, while he managed to get a miracle strike. Hearing the word miracle strike comes as a shock to Teresa, who tells Eldo that using miracle strike means he's an expert. Confused, Eldo figures that everyone should be able to pull off a critical by chance, and to his surprise, Teresa begins pressuring him to take another request that is a C rank one. Realizing that she wants to see him 6 feet underground, he ends up finding one for himself and makes Teresa process it for him. She mentions that he doesn't need to do anything but bully a few rabbits and that it should be safe. But at the same time, he can never be too careful and advises him to prepare himself as much as possible. After asking her the location of the second forest, he heads out the guild and runs into the examiner, who calls him the strongest novice, asking if he's heading out to bag some town chicks. Eldo replies, saying that he's not the strongest, and lets him know that he took a request to hunt rabbits in the second forest. He further adds that Teresa told him that this job should be safe when he rejected the higher ranked ones she gave to him earlier. With that being said, the examiner wishes him luck and walks away, while Eldo agrees to do his best as well. Before long, he arrives at the second forest and decides not to underestimate the enemies, even if they are distant cousins of Bugs Bunny. After walking through the forest, he starts to hear some rustling around him and wonders if he saw a rabbit, only to later realize that it looks more like a lesser wolf. But to his surprise, the wolf brought all the homies along, and without wasting any time, they started charging at him. Eldo begins cursing Teresa for telling him that it's safe and figures that he can't run away anymore. His only choice is to fight back the 6 enemies charging straight towards him. After getting into position, he dodges their attack in the nick of time, and before they even get the chance to attack again, Eldo easily manages to cut one of the wolves. Afterward, it doesn't take him long to cut down the other one as well. He figures that creating as many one-on-one situations as possible while fighting multiple enemies is the key and continues cutting down the remaining wolves. Before long, he's done and notices that his body feels a bit lighter, which makes him wonder if he leveled up. As he's not sure if this world has a leveling system, Eldo decides to test it and uses a skill named Reinforced Stone Throw to throw a stone forward. That stone hits the tree and manages to damage the trunk quite a lot, making him realize that he can now use level 2 skills, which means this is a level up. With that being said, he decides to head back and give Teresa a piece of his mind. After returning back to the guild, Eldo shows Teresa the corpse of a wolf, asking if the guild calls this a rabbit. Surprised, she mentions that there shouldn't be any lesser wolves in the Kick Rabbit Forest. Eldo lets her know that this is the first time he's heard of the Kick Rabbit Forest, to which Teresa replies that she told him to head to the Kick Rabbit Forest earlier. But if he defeated lesser wolves, that means he ended up going to the second forest instead. Eldo figures that she's playing dumb and accepts his mistake, asking Teresa to cancel the request. But just then, Teresa mentions that she accidentally filled in the procedures for the order of hunting the wolves by accident, asking if he defeated the wolves already. Annoyed by her third-rate acting skills, he lets her know that he managed to defeat 6 of them, causing Teresa to tell Eldo that he will get a total of 120,000 gil for it. After seeing this much dough for the first time in his life, Eldo ends up forgiving Teresa and figures that she must have given him a request with the highest amount that is suitable for his strength. The next day, Eldo pays a visit to the nearby blacksmith shop, wanting to replace his dollar store sword with a real one this time. Eldo is aware that he needs good weapons to make up for his lack of stats in the future, but after seeing the store filled with nothing but shabby-looking swords, he asks the owner if he's got some better ones. Luckily, the show owner shows him an expensive one, and after trying it out, Eldo realizes that it's a pretty good sword and ends up purchasing it. With that, Eldo is once again as broke as a crypto investor and visits the guild again, asking if there are any more requests for wolves slaying, to which Teresa agrees, saying that they still have 32 left in the request limit. She further elaborates that he will only get a reward for slaying 32 of them and won't be rewarded past this amount. Following that, he asks to take another request, and when Teresa reminds him of the limit, Eldo lets her know that eliminating 32 wolves will only take 2 hours, and he doesn't want to come back to the guild to take another request afterward. Eldo then begins looking at the requests and realizing that his power is probably around E rank. He ends up choosing a request to slay spear mice, which Teresa thinks is a perfect job for him. Later that day, he is done slaying all 32 wolves and decides to complete the next request, that is spear mouse slaying. Before long, he arrives at the spear mouse forest where all the little rodents live and notices that it looks a little different from how Teresa explained. Just then, he sees one of the spear mice and figures that this must be the hunting ground. Without wasting any time, he reaches for his sword when suddenly, the mouse begins screaming its lungs out, followed by squeaks of several other mice coming from every direction. Eldo begins to wonder if it called its friends, and just by hearing the noise, he realizes that he can't tell if there are 20 of them or more. However, before they all gather, he decides to reduce the number as much as he can and eliminates the first mouse. While the mice are pretty weak on their own, right now, there are more of them than dudes lining up outside a pleasure booth. Eldo is aware that with that many enemies, he will take damage no matter what, but at the same time, he has no other choice but to fight. Soon after, the mice begin dashing towards Eldo and he starts slashing them once by once. Unfortunately, one of them manages to cut Eldo's arm, but an injury like this is bearable for him, and even if there are this many enemies, there are some skills he can use to defeat them efficiently. As soon as the number of attacks start to increase, Eldo uses the skill called Self-Cure to heal all the wounds and continues defeating the rest of the mice while making sure to heal up from time to time. Back at the guild, Teresa gets surprised hearing that he slayed 276 mice, but Eldo is sure that she must be acting this time as well. Nonetheless, he informs her that the one mouse he spotted called its friends, but Teresa lets him know that they are not that kind of monster. When Eldo asks if they aren't E rank because a lot of them gather up, she replies that they don't gather by the hundreds, and after taking a closer look at the material, she realizes that it's from army spear mice. Apparently, it's a different monster, as an army spear mouse is C rank. Eldo questions if he failed the quest, and Teresa lets him know that going against a group of army spear mice means certain death. Knowing that there's no point worrying about it now, he asks if she can change the request to an army spear mouse, but Teresa refuses. But at the same time, she lets him know that the material from spear mice goes for a high price, and that he will receive 20,000 gil for each material he gathered. With that being said, Eldo receives 2 bags full of coins and ends up replacing them with platinum coins, which are worth around 1,000,000 gil each. Furthermore, she advises him not to show them around as there are a bunch of thieves, but she is sure that he would be able to handle them easily. Additionally, Teresa realizes that he can now go to the capital and seems a bit disappointed that he'll not be around anymore. After informing her what he plans to do after reaching the capital, Eldo begins walking away but gets stopped by Teresa, who runs up to him and apologizes for lying to him about the kick rabbit request. However, Eldo lets her know that he doesn't mind, advising her not to do that to other people as someone might get really angry at her. After saying goodbye to both Teresa and the examiner, he is on his way to the port town. After safely reaching Minetton, he asks one of the soldiers about the ferry ticket, who informs Eldo that he can get one from the Maxia commercial firm. Before long, he pays a visit to the Maxia commercial firm, where the receptionist asks if he has a letter of introduction, and when Eldo refuses, the receptionist informs him that the ticket costs around 3,000,000 gil. Eldo confidently pulls out the platinum coins, causing the receptionist to wonder if he is some famous adventurer. With his ticket booked, Eldo finally steps on the ship and thinks about how it will take him around 3 hours to reach the capital. Just then, he notices something making a sound and realizes that it's a relic called Water Traveling Stone and wonders if they are using it to control the ship. Additionally, he sees 2 hot chicks trying to do something but failing again and again. After taking a closer look, he realizes that they are brewing and figures that they must be trying to make pale green spirit potion. Coincidentally, one of them ends up hearing Eldo say that and asks Eldo what he just said. When Eldo lets them know that he said pale green spirit potion, they are shocked and ask if he knows how to brew that potion. This makes that girl ask if he knows how to brew it, to which Eldo agrees. This makes the girl request Eldo to make the potion for her, agreeing to pay him whatever amount he wants. Without any hesitation, Eldo straight up asks for 10,000,000 gils, making that girl question if that's all he wants. Shocked, Eldo agrees, and within 10 minutes, he manages to successfully brew the potion. With tears in her eyes, that girl mentions that she finally has the potion, while all Eldo can wonder is if she'd let him feel those jugs. With that being said, she finally gives him his reward, and when he mentions that she gave him a bit too much, that girl lets him know that he gave her enough for 2 bottles. Additionally, she also gives him a card, and when Eldo asks what it is, she replies that it's a token of appreciation from the Maxia company and a proof of trust from their company. This makes Eldo ask if it's really okay for her to give him something so important, and that girl agrees, saying that one has to be able to do at least this much being a company chairman. Following that, she introduces herself as Mina, the chairman of Maxia company and the one who operates the ship. Realizing that she's a big shot, Eldo comments on how he didn't expect to be getting the trust of the company chairman and thanks her once again. Furthermore, she asks for his name and then says her goodbyes, hoping to meet him again someday. Just then, Eldo notices something in the sea and informs Mina about it. He further mentions that it seems to be getting closer. Fortunately, she agrees to check it out and asks one of the crewmates who looks in that direction using a monocular. He informs her that it's a sea dragon. Mina freaks out, saying that a sea dragon shouldn't be here as they are 500 kilometers away from its territory. Eldo remembers that a sea dragon is far more powerful than a wolf and uses spear arms to stab its opponents. If a novice like him gets hit by one of those arms, he'll surely find himself in the afterlife. Nonetheless, Eldo asks if the ship's going to be alright, but according to Mina, it's not designed to take on a sea dragon. Following that, she orders everyone who can fight to gather around, while asking the weakling to hide inside. Eldo notices that the sea dragon seems to be after the ship's mast, but there's nothing they can do as if the mast is broken. The ship will sink and currently, they have no other choice but to defend it. After everyone is gathered, Eldo asks if there is someone who can attack at long range, and a few of them raise their hands. Noticing that there are 3 mages and 2 archers, he figures that they can make do with this many. But when he asks if there's someone who can defend the mast from the sea dragon, everyone starts looking down in disappointment. Mina mentions that most people can't fight a rank monster who has almost never been defeated before. Having no other choice, Eldo decides to do it himself and climbs onto the railing to farm some aura. Just as the sea dragon is in sight, he orders everyone to start attacking, and without wasting any time, everyone fires their attacks. Luckily, each one of those attacks hit the sea dragon, but it continues making its way closer. Everyone begins to wonder if it didn't work, but after taking a closer look, Eldo mentions that it definitely worked, asking them to keep attacking. He is aware that they can take it down if they keep attacking, but is aware that offense was never the issue. Suddenly, the sea dragon dives underwater and disappears from everyone's sight, only to reappear in front of the ship, ready to attack. Furthermore, it takes out one of its arms from underwater and tries attacking Eldo. He plans to match the timing of that attack with a critical hit and successfully manages to do so, allowing him to deflect the attack, causing everyone to be surprised. They can't believe that the dragon's attack was deflected by a sword and start to wonder who that adventurer is. He further thinks that it is possible to deflect the attack with critical hits, as the dragon is pretty easy to read. Simultaneously, Mina orders everyone to keep attacking, and after getting hit by those attacks, the sea dragon gets even more furious and takes out both of its arms. As expected, Eldo begins to struggle deflecting attack from both its arms, and even though he deflects one of the arms, the other one barely misses him. However, Eldo is aware that he doesn't need to block all the attacks, and they just need to take it down before the mast breaks. As the other continues attacking it, Eldo notices that it's almost dead, but just then, the sea dragon tries landing one last attack. Eldo quickly notices that this one is not heading towards him but Mina instead. Just in the nick of time, he manages to reach there and save her life. With that being said, he tells everyone to finish it off, and with a few more attacks, they manage to bring the sea dragon down for good. The old fart on the ship can't believe that they defeated the sea dragon and thanked all the long-range attackers along with the powerful adventurer, only to realize that he's nowhere to be seen. Turns out Eldo managed to hide in time as he didn't want to stand out too much, especially in a ship full of guild staff nobles. Suddenly, Mina appears, asking if he means people like her, to which Eldo agrees, saying that he's got stuff to do in the capital and doesn't want to draw too much attention. Mina understands and reminds Eldo that he saved a lot of lives, including hers, and promises to repay this debt someday. Meanwhile, some hooded figures on the shore can't believe the dragon was defeated, but mention that it was only a minor setback for their organization, the Garden of Despair. Back on the ship, the crewmates announce that they will soon reach the capital, making Eldo think that he can finally change his job to a sage. As soon as the ship arrives near the capital, Eldo sees the cathedral is in a worse shape than the Twitter office after Elon took over. This makes him question if this is the captain's cathedral he has been searching for, and notices the God of Jobs portrait carved into the walls. Even though it looks like a mess, what matters is that it's a cathedral of the God of Jobs. As long as it exists, Eldo is sure that he can change his job. Seeing him stare at the cathedral makes Mina wonder if he wants something from that church, letting Eldo know that she can help him out as she knows someone from that church who can take him there. Eldo figures that it's a pretty good suggestion, as he has never heard of people actually changing jobs in the capital cathedral, except for the game. In the end, he accepts her help, asking Mina if she can get him there, to which she replies that it's not actually the cathedral, but an old church that was abandoned decades ago. She then shows him the real cathedral building, which seems to be in a much better state. However, Eldo notices that it doesn't have the portrait of the god, wondering if he can even change jobs in that place. Nonetheless, he asks if he can enter the ruins without permission, and Mina agrees, saying that a permission is not needed to enter it. However, she also warns him about crackheads living there and how it could even be a bandit hideout. But at the same time, she is sure that he can handle a bandit or two. Eldo mentions that he'd rather not push his luck too much, as he's only an F rank, which comes as a surprise to Mina, who figures that he must be joking, but when he assures her that it's the truth, Mina mentions that the guild he joined must be blind and decides to increase his rank through an acquaintance she knows. But to her surprise, Eldo refuses, saying that it won't do him any good being a high ranker with this less experience, and while Mina thinks that he doesn't seem inexperienced at all, she agrees to his request. Furthermore, after seeing the fights, Eldo is sure that the skills of inhabitants of this world are the same as the game, apart from the fact that they are hopelessly bad at fighting. But at the same time, there's something he can't do with skill alone and would need stats. For example, he wouldn't have been able to eliminate the sea dragon even if it let him hit it for 10 hours, and this is why he shouldn't move to a higher rank as a novice. After thanking her for the information, Eldo decides to sneak in later, and Mina advises him to ask for her help if he's ever in need. With that being said, he boards off the ship and makes his way inside the capital, realizing that it's way more lively compared to Ilya. Later that day, he checks into an inn and thinks that even though he wants to change jobs quickly, he shouldn't recklessly barge in the ruins and go in the nighttime, so he isn't spotted so easily. According to his calculations, people can't think well at around 3 in the morning and figure that it's the best time to sneak in. Until then, Eldo decides to rest, but before he can catch any sleep, his tummy begins to rumble, making him realize that he's starving. This reminds him that he hasn't eaten anything since he got on the ship, and as he has some time to waste, Eldo decides to go out and eat something. Following that, he wanders around the town and ends up spotting a restaurant which seems to look like a decent place. After he enters the restaurant, the waitress asks him to share a table as it's already too crowded, telling him to share a table with a blonde chick. Noticing the food she's eating, Eldo decides to order the same thing she's having, and after taking a bite, he mentions how good it tastes. Just then, someone barges into the restaurant, shouting at the waitress for not reserving tables for his party members. He then starts bragging about being a card holder, but gets told by the waitress that they don't do reservations. She further says that he'll have to wait until his party arrives. This makes Nick Fury with hair even more furious after hearing that there are no empty seats, causing the waitress to ask him to wait until a seat becomes available. In the end, he concludes that he just needs to make a seat available and walks up to Eldo, asking him to get off that seat. The baddie sitting with Eldo wets her pants while Eldo comments on how annoying this situation is. Shocked, that guy tells Eldo to repeat what he said, to which Eldo replies, asking him to wait for his party members and his turn just like everyone else. However, that guy stays persistent and tells him to move away from that seat. Realizing that he isn't here to talk, Eldo tells him to wait for his party members, as by the time they get here, he'll be done eating. He then continues enjoying his food, which pisses that guy off even more, and he ends up taking out his sword, causing everyone to panic. Without any hesitation, he raises his sword, ready to attack Eldo, making Eldo realize that he is even more idiotic than he thought. However, seeing how that guy is gripping his sword makes Eldo think about what terrible style he has. Furthermore, Eldo notices a fork near his hand when suddenly, that guy ends up attacking Eldo, only for his sword to get deflected and land behind him. Turns out Eldo managed to deflect that strike using a critical counter with a fork, and at this point, that guy is flabbergasted about what just happened. Eldo then walks up to him, saying that it's fine to defend himself as he was attacked, and twists that wimp's hand, causing him to scream in pain. Additionally, Eldo lets him know that he's using a skill to increase his strength and could break his arm if he wanted to. Still not fazed, that guy asks Eldo if he could get away with this, to which Eldo replies that this is the least he could do for an idiot who takes out his sword in a restaurant. He gets shocked hearing Eldo call him an idiot, and when Eldo asks if he is some sort of famous adventurer, he lets him know that he has a bronze card from Zany's company, telling Eldo to prepare himself as he'll be getting pumped from the back by old, divorced men for the rest of his life. When Eldo appears confused about the bronze card, a customer lets him know that it's given to an adventurer who is recognized by a company and remembers that he was given a similar card by Mina. That guy further mentions that the Zany's company won't let it slide, and Eldo replies that he happens to have a similar card. With that being said, Eldo takes out the card he had, asking him if this is similar to the bronze card he's talking about. Seeing it causes that guy to scream in terror and fall onto the ground, commenting on how it's a gold card from Maxia company. Everyone gets shocked, and one of them mentions that they knew Eldo wasn't normal for deflecting a sword with a fork, but having a gold card is on another level. While Eldo wonders if this card is that big of a deal, that adventurer begins begging Eldo to forgive his life, promising to hand over everything he has. As expected, everyone starts talking about how that adventurer is done for, and that they have never seen a gold card holder. Realizing that this has become a pretty big deal, Eldo decides to put it away when suddenly, the guards arrive, asking for the guy causing a ruckus. Before Eldo can even say something, that adventurer informs the guards that he was the one causing trouble, asking them to throw him in jail, to which the guards happily agree. Nonetheless, Eldo decides to leave as he stood out more than he wanted, but gets interrupted by the blondie who shows her gratitude. Eldo advises her to stay out of trouble, knowing that he was only protecting himself, and leaves the bar. Apparently, he ended up getting a free meal and a ticket for a free meal next time as well. Additionally, as there still seems to be some free time, Eldo plans to get some sleep before the appointed time. But even after lying on the bed for quite a while, Eldo couldn't sleep as he was way too excited to get rid of the useless novice job. But thanks to lying down, his body is now ready to go. With that being said, he steps outside and notices that everyone is fast asleep at this hour. Following that, he covers one of his eyes and uses the skill named Night Vision to get a clearer view. Apparently, this is one of the skills every job has, and Eldo wishes that not many people know about this, or he might be in trouble. Afterward, he makes his way to the church ruins, and after getting close enough, he can hear sounds from inside, making him realize that there are people present. Eldo then hopes that he doesn't have to fight any of the residents and finally steps inside, figuring that this church must have the job change chamber underground. However, the voices also sound like they are coming from the basement, forcing him to go where the residents might be present. Eventually, he reaches the room where all the bandits are making a tier list of the baddies in town. Unfortunately, there seems to be a lock on that door, and Eldo is aware that entering through there would be a bad idea. Having no other choice, he steps outside and notices a well, and without thinking much, he starts making his way down using the rope. Luckily, he finds a door that takes him inside the building, but it appears to be locked as well. Even though he knows that he will be able to get inside from there, Eldo is aware that he'll be spotted in no time and needs to make a move to avoid this. What he needs is a distraction, and for that, he ends up breaking the lock on the previous door using his sword, shocking all the bandits sitting inside. Eldo instantly runs away from there, and as he doesn't have enough time to use the runs, Eldo jumps in the well like a madman. Simultaneously, he uses a skill named landing technique to make his fall a lot softer and safer. After hearing the bandits panicking outside, he realizes that he can enter and finds out that this room is used for storage. Among the boxes, he finds some of them filled with narcotics, reminding him of the organization that used to distribute it and caused several incidents. However, now's not the time for him to deal with this, and just as he opens the door, he finds one of the bandits outside. He instantly informs everyone about the intruder, causing his comrades to appear as well. With no hesitation, they all prepare their bows to fire arrows at Eldo, and having no other choice, he starts dashing away, realizing that he needs to change jobs as soon as possible. Luckily, he notices a door with the portrait of the job and figures that it must be the job changing room. After entering that room, he finds the sculpture of that god inside and realizes that he can finally change his job. But at the same time, those annoying pests still seem to be following Eldo, and in order to buy himself some time, he blocks the door using some bookshelves lying around. He then remembers that one needs a priest or needs to chant the spell themselves for the job change and starts chanting that spell. In the end, the blessing he chooses is Sage, which causes the crystal ball in the sculpture hands to glow and change his jobs along with giving him a pretty solid drip. Following that, Eldo realizes that he has never felt like this in-game and figures that this is what changing jobs feels like. Before long, the bandits start trying to break the door and end up succeeding in the end. Aware that he has no time to deal with the small fries, Eldo uses a fireball to break the wall on the other side to use it as a distraction, only to use his previous path to escape. Furthermore, he uses the skill named Float to easily fly up the well, looking at the bandits from above as they wonder where the intruder went. Now that his business is done, Eldo decides to go away, and as soon as he lands on the ground, a dagger comes flying from behind. Eldo manages to dodge in the nick of time, causing the hooded figure who threw it to compliment him for being a skilled individual. Eldo looks at the crest on his clothes and realizes that he's from the Garden of Despair. Apparently, it is an organization that attempts to destroy human society, and while there were many such organizations in the game, the Garden of Despair were the most dangerous ones. That man then questions where Eldo heard that name from, to which he replies that it's natural to know the names of the people who tried sinking the ship using the Sea Dragon. He is amazed to hear this, as that was classified information among the organization, and asks Eldo if he was the swordsman with a shabby sword who prevented the ship from sinking. Eldo asks him not to insult the sword he bought using his life savings and asks that man what he would do if he were the swordsman who saved the ship. But to Eldo's surprise, that man ends up offering Eldo to join the organization, reassuring him that he is one of the top brasses named Brazies and can vouch for his abilities. Brazies further adds that Eldo can have anything from money to busty chicks, which makes Eldo realize that his best chance to survive is to accept the offer. Furthermore, it would be interesting to find out about their motives, but even after all that, Eldo ends up refusing to join. Brazies mentions that he's not asking Eldo to join forever, asking him to try for a week, and reassures Eldo that the money is good, and he can eliminate as many people as he wants. Just then, he throws another dagger at Eldo, which he notices just in time and manages to dodge, only to find another dagger appearing right in front of his eyes. Fortunately, Eldo somehow dodges the second dagger as well, and lets him know that he has never taken a life, but he can try that starting with him. Brazes then takes out even more daggers and throws all of them at Eldo. As expected, Eldo easily deflects all of them, and after appearing close enough, he tries stabbing Brazes, only to get blocked by one of the daggers he's holding. Brazes then mocks the sword Eldo has and lifts his arm to strike, but Eldo manages to get away just in time. Furthermore, after noticing that Brazes is using only one hand to hold his dagger while he's using both of his hands, Eldo figures that Brazes is definitely a lot better than him. Nonetheless, Eldo throws clay bullets at Brazes, but he manages to dodge it in the last second by jumping, later telling Eldo that his sword was so light because he is a wizard. However, Eldo doesn't seem to like this insult and dashes towards Brazes with his sword in hand. Just as Brazes tries defending himself using his dagger, Eldo uses a spell on his feet, making him realize that Eldo was just pretending to come for his head and was actually aiming for his legs instead. Apparently, Eldo uses his white cream sauce to stick Brazes' foot on the ground, causing him to wonder what this salty-smelling thing is. It turns out it's a sticky bomb that is used to trap the target. Additionally, the spell looks a lot like clay bullets, which is why Eldo used it at first, making it harder for Brazes to distinguish them in the dark. Brazes begins to panic as he can't move from his potion, and Eldo starts cooking another spell, letting Brazes know that it's a shame he couldn't eliminate him. With that being said, Eldo hits him with a flame bomb, causing Brazes to scream in pain as his body slowly turns into a medium-rare steak. While looking at his enemy taking his last breath, Eldo notices Brazes taking out a pill from his pocket and putting it in his mouth, making him scream even louder. Not only that, but his body starts transforming, and before long, Brazes tries landing a punch with his now reformed body, but Eldo manages to get away in time. The punch's impact breaks the bridge they are fighting on, proving how much stronger Brazes has gotten. Brazes, who was once human, has now turned into a Pokemon-looking beast, and looking at his appearance reminds Eldo of the artificial devil pill. Apparently, this pill is used by the top branch of Garden of Despair, and it greatly enhances the user's strength at the cost of losing their intelligence and being unable to return to human form. The fact that Brazes used this means that the crest and the names aren't the only things they share from the game. Eldo then mentions that he'll be in trouble if he doesn't fight Brazes seriously and lets him know that he needs to defeat him. With that being said, he shoots fire arrows at Brazes, and even though he manages to catch them with his bare hands, the fire arrow ends up exploding, taking Brazes' arm along. But Eldo is not done yet and begins shooting several more fire arrows at him, which causes a huge explosion, ultimately sending Brazes to the afterlife. After he is done, Eldo flies back to his inn, and the next morning, he thinks that even though he managed to eliminate the guy who was tracking him, he needs to prepare himself to fight more people like him in the future. With that being said, he takes a stroll outside, thinking how a sage needs staff as the power of the spell width, and without a staff is quite noticeable. The only reason they managed to defeat the sea dragon was because all the adventurers were pretty well equipped. Ultimately, he pays a visit to the nearby shopping store, and after checking out all the staff, he figures that even though they are good, they are all for wizards. Sages can use any kind of staff there is, but for a sage to show its true potential, it's a given that he or she needs to staff for sages only. Just then, an idea pops into his mind, and he pays Mina a visit, who wonders if Eldo is in need of something. Eldo agrees, saying that he has been visiting stores all morning, looking for something, and mentions how amazing that golden card is, as all he had to do was show it at the reception, and they all started to treat him really politely. Eventually, she asks him about the thing he's looking for, to which Eldo replies that he's looking for a staff. This makes Mina question, asking if he wasn't a sword fighter, to which Eldo disagrees, showing her a spell and letting her know that he's a sage. Mina wonders if Sage is a mixture of a sword fighter and a wizard, and Eldo informs her that Sage is a purely magical job and he'd be as strong as a novice wielding a sword. Mina further asks how he was able to deflect all the sea dragon's attacks, to which Eldo replies that it is something even a novice swordsman should be able to do. Mina figures that he must be a monster, but Eldo replies that anyone could do it with enough practice. She also mentions that it's a waste for him to be anything but a swordsman, but considering how strong he is, he must have his reason. With that being said, she takes him to the storage room where all the weapons are present. He can't believe this collection, as all of them are first-rate items, but not even one of them is good for a sage. Just then, he notices a staff and asks Mina if he can hold it, but even though she agrees, she mentions that it's an artifact excavated from ancient ruins and the worst staff they got. However, Eldo doesn't seem to care, and after picking the staff in his hand, he realizes that this one is definitely for sages. Furthermore, it's a top-tier staff and everyone probably thought it was terrible because the wizard tried to use it. However, after seeing it worth more than his entire bloodline combined, Eldo freaks out and gets told by Mina that excavated artifacts are expensive regardless of their performance and allows Eldo to pay her with something other than money. Eldo replies that the only thing he's got is a sword worth 150,000 gils. But to his surprise, what Mina wants is the membership number on the back of his guild card and decides to buy it for 30 million gils. Eldo realizes that she's paying him in exchange for doing requests for her. He further questions what value is there in his guild card, and Mina lets him know that she needs those numbers in order to request a certain adventurer, and reassures him that he'll receive a ton of bread. Still not really sure about this, he tells Mina that she's paying too much for an F-rank adventurer, to which she replies that she needs to have her hands on him before the other companies notice his true potential, and that 30 million gils is the standard rate for an A-rank adventurer. Realizing that she is investing in him, Eldo accepts the offer and decides to take his leave, asking her not to go crazy with the requests, to which she agrees, saying that she looks forward to it. Later, Eldo is wandering around the town, happy to receive not only the staff but some additional money from Mina. But at the same time, he's a little scared regarding the requests she might make him do. Suddenly, he notices someone behind him and figures that he is being followed. Nonetheless, Eldo tells that person to show himself, saying that he'll assume that he's an enemy if he doesn't. Luckily, that person comes out, reassuring Eldo that he's not suspicious and letting him know that he's from the guild. Apparently, he was curious after seeing what Eldo did on the ship the other day, which makes Eldo question the reason he's tailing him. However, that old man mentions that he was just observing Eldo as his job is to scout strong adventurers for the guild. Turns out the guild has a formal subjugation position, and unlike normal adventurers, these positions offer stable and high rewards. Eldo figures that it's like a civil servant, but is also aware that he might be forced to participate in troublesome requests and ends up refusing to take the offer. The old man understands and asks Eldo to come to the guild if he changes his mind, asking him to mention that he was referred by Lijas and they will instantly accept his application. Afterward, Eldo pays the guild a visit and notices that there are so few subjugation quests in the capital and figures that the subjugators must have a lot of free time. He then lets the receptionist know that he has a few questions and asks if there are any monster subjugation requests available. The receptionist refuses, saying that the royal army defeats most of the monsters as part of their training. Eldo realizes that he might need to move to another city and asks the receptionist if he can report a change of jobs, which makes her ask for the type of job he got. But when Eldo replies that he's now a sage, the receptionist gets confused as she's never heard of such a job. This reminds Eldo that this world only knows classes from the coming of age ceremony and that it's unlikely for a job jewel to recognize his job. In order to register at the guild, one needs to be certified using a jobs jewel. In the end, Eldo decides not to change his registration, and the receptionist apologizes for not knowing much about inferior jobs. She further elaborates that inferior jobs are like Berserker and Saint, but even when people with these jobs join parties, they struggle to keep up and quit halfway through. Hearing this statement reminds Eldo that there are two types of jobs in the game, the basic and superior. Basic jobs include jobs like wizards, swordsmen, archers, and so on, while the superior jobs include jobs like sages, heroes, saints, and berserkers. Getting a superior job from a coming-of-age ceremony is pretty rare, and while they are considered successful in the game, they seem to be considered failures in this world. The reason they are a burden is because even though they defeat the same number of monsters, the people with basic jobs will level up faster. However, Eldo still can't figure out why superior jobs aren't top tier, as a difference in level shouldn't be a reason to get kicked out of the party. Curious, Eldo asks why saints are considered inferior jobs, as the divine heal they use can heal more than regular, which makes the receptionist question what divine heal is. Eldo gets shocked by the arrogance of this shorty and wonders if they don't know about something basic. In the end, he realizes that it's better for him to stay as a novice and steps out, finally deciding to go to another city and try his luck there. But before doing that, he pays Mina another visit, and when she asks if he needs help, Eldo lets her know that he just came to let her know that he'll be leaving the capital. He further elaborates that he went to the trouble of becoming an adventurer and going to the capital, only to find out that there aren't any subjugation requests. Mina agrees, saying that the capital is too peaceful, and it'll be a waste for someone like him to do odd jobs. When Eldo mentions that she's exaggerating, Mina disagrees, telling him that just a few powerful adventurers can have a severe impact on the economy, and he is one of them. She then reminds him that he prevented the ship from sinking, letting him know that it was full of business executives and guild leaders. If the ship had sunk, this country would have been in chaos right now. Following that, she asks about the city he's planning to go to and gets told that Eldo has decided to visit Fiesta, which is close to the capital. Mina comments that it's a good choice and suddenly remembers a good subjugation request in the capital. Apparently, it's a request to subjugate a C-rank monster called the Great Mole, a monster Eldo is never heard of. Mina further mentions that the Maxia company has a field in the capital, and when Eldo asks if the mole appears in that field, Mina agrees. Additionally, she decides to pay him 500,000 for each mole he defeats, asking him to defeat them all if possible. As expected, Eldo instantly agrees to take the job, to which Mina replies that she's relieved as it's a difficult request. When Eldo asks if that's really the case, Mina tells him that they travel underground so it's difficult to deal with them. Later that day, Eldo finally arrives at the field and realizes that this is an entire farming region. Furthermore, he mocks Mina for calling it a small field and decides to get more information from the person managing the place. After that, he knocks on the door and informs the manager that he has received a request from Mina. The manager gets relieved knowing that he's an adventurer and thanks him for accepting the request. But before getting started, he asks the manager about the field that Maxia company owns, only to be told that the company owns everything he sees. Eldo, being a peasant at heart, gets shocked and wonders just how much power and authority the Maxia company has. With that being said, he decides to get started and asks if it's okay to destroy the field a bit, and the manager replies that it's okay unless he burns it with fire magic. Furthermore, she asks if he's on his own as finding the moles can take some time, but Eldo reassures her that he's fine as all the monsters are going to gather at this spot. Just then, he uses the skill named Ground Bait, which spreads magical powers on the ground, luring the monsters who are searching for food. Before long, he notices that they are coming and suddenly, the ground bursts open, followed by a trio of moles appearing on the surface. Without wasting any time, they begin charging at Eldo, which makes him realize why the farmland was getting destroyed. Afterward, he uses his staff to use a skill named Ice Pillar and crushes all the moles using it. Eldo then apologizes for messing the fields more than he intended to, but gets told that it's okay. With the request now completed, he pays a visit to Mina once again, who is surprised to see him back so quickly, asking if he forgot something. But when Eldo mentions that he is done, she freaks out, letting him know that there are around 20 of them, to which Eldo replies that there were 31 in total, and he took care of all of them. This makes Mina wonder how he did it so quickly, as it hasn't even been 3 hours, and gets told that he used magic to lure them. After Eldo explains everything, Mina mentions that it's the first time she's heard of it, asking if he can use both swords and magic. Eldo lets her know that he is good at magic, while the sword is just for support. With that being said, she thanks him for completing the request, and Eldo replies that he'll be heading to Fiesta now. Following that, he visits the guild and gets paid around 20 million gills for the quest, including an additional reward. A few days later, he arrives at Fiesta and realizes that there aren't many requests here either. Even though he wants to go to the next town, Eldo decides to take some requests from Fiesta and goes to the receptionist, who asks if she can help him with something. Eldo asks if he can take a request from this guild, but report it to a guild in a different city, to which she agrees, saying that it's possible as long as it's a guild within the country. Eldo ends up taking the request to subjugate the Widowmantes and Huge Todd, causing the receptionist to mention that she's glad that there are still some requests left. When Eldo questions her about it, she replies that Fiesta now has 2 big names, and one of them includes the Flame Spear. Eldo figures that the Flame Spear must be a strong man, and the receptionist adds that strong adventurers get an alias. Right now, Flame Spear is the strongest solo adventurer in the world. Eldo mentions that he'd love to meet him someday, and after getting advised to be careful, he leaves. Following that, he arrives in the forest and uses the skill named Magic Search that gives him the location of the Weed Mantis. Afterward, Eldo uses another skill to make himself invisible, which will allow him to get a free shot on the enemy. Before long, he arrives close enough to the Mantis and creates a flame circle around them, causing all the Weed Mantis to burn to their demise. Now that one of the requests is complete, Eldo thinks about magic search and invisibility being the basics of solo hunting for a sage. Just then, he hears a sound and wondering where it's coming from. He uses magic search again and finds someone fighting King Kong on their own. Eldo figures that it must be the area boss and remembers that they give a huge amount of experience when they are defeated. Still keeping the invisibility skill, Eldo moves towards the voice, planning on lending that person a hand if he's struggling. After arriving close enough, he realizes that the person fighting it is a downright baddie who seems to be struggling quite a lot. When Eldo asks if she's okay, that girl tells him to get away and continues fighting the monster. Eldo realizes that the monster is called the Raging Ape and is harder to fight it solo than a sea dragon. Additionally, he didn't expect a small female adventurer to be fighting her, and ultimately, he decides to help her out. To start things off, he purchases the blood poison skill along with the shadow fog skill, and now with everything set, Eldo first throws the sticky bomb nearby and uses magic taunt to distract the ape's attention towards himself. This causes the ape to run towards him, surprising the girl. As expected, the ape steps on the sticky bomb and falls face down, unable to move any longer. Furthermore, Eldo uses the shadow fog along with blood poison, which causes the ape to struggle. Apparently, the shadow fog takes away the opponent's vision while blood poison drains their vitality. That girl mentions how Eldo easily restrained the ape while she couldn't even handle him properly. Eldo then decides to heal her injuries, and she instantly notices that all the pain is gone, making her question what he did. Eldo replies that he used healing magic, which surprises her as he can use both offensive and healing magic, which is something no adventurer has done before. Eldo then suggests focusing on the ape as he's not completely restraining him. If he keeps on using blood poison, the ape can be defeated, but it will take an eternity, and ultimately, Eldo decides to seek help from the flame spear. But to his surprise, the girl lets him know that she's the flame spear, but her acquaintances call her Milia. This comes as a shock to Eldo as the flame spear couldn't even defeat an ape, and what's worse is that he expected the flame spear to be some sweaty hairy man. Eldo then introduces himself as well and gets told by her to call her Milia. Furthermore, she apologizes for not being able to do anything against the ape, and Eldo reassures her that he didn't mean to criticize her. He then asks if she's called the flame spear because she has the skill flame weapon, to which she agrees, asking how he knows. Eldo realizes that this means her job is a hero, and that it's such a waste that she isn't knowledgeable about her extremely overpowered skills. Nonetheless, he asks for Milia's help, telling her to attack it non-stop using the combo attack while he distracts it. This makes Milia question what a combo attack is, which surprises Eldo even more. In the end, he tells her to repeat what he says and makes her purchase the combo attack skills from the system store. After that, he tells her to swing her spear while chanting combo attack, and after she does, she notices something different with her spear, making her wonder if she activated a skill. When Eldo agrees, Milia asks who he is, to which Eldo replies that he's just her friendly neighborhood F-rank adventurer. She can't believe he's an F-rank with knowledge like that, but the two of them get distracted by the ape freeing himself from the sticky bomb. The ape then starts punching the ground, causing Eldo to advise her to be careful of his random attacks as he's taking away his vision. Following that, he decides to deactivate the status ailment and attract the beast, telling Milia to use combo attack she just learned. Milia mentions that it's impossible, but gets reassured by Eldo that he'll hold back the raging ape. With that being said, Milia gets prepared and Eldo releases the shadow smoke skill, making the ape run at Eldo. Just when he is about to land a punch on Eldo, he uses his staff to block the attack, telling Milia to do her job. Simultaneously, she uses a skill named Flame Weapon and hits the ape with a combo attack. The strength of that attack makes Milia believe that she can do it and continue attacking the ape, ultimately defeating it. At this point, Milia is amazed as she never thought she could use such a powerful attack, and Eldo mentions that it looks like both of them will be leveling up. Milia once again mentions that she can't believe an F-rank is this powerful, and to her surprise, Eldo asks her to form a party with him. He further elaborates that he has been fighting a lot of boss-class monsters recently, but he can't defeat them fast enough on his own, which is why he needs her firepower to make it a lot easier. Not only that, but he offers to split the reward 50-50 and even offers to teach her some good skills. Milia comments on how she doesn't have a reason to refuse and once again mocks him for being an F-rank. However, she also says that Eldo doesn't seem like a bad person and agrees to form a party with him. Do you think Eldo can be called the strongest adventurer in the world? Comment Sage if you'd like a part 2 of this series. As usual, thank you for tuning in and we'll catch you in the next one.